2, f of x equals negative 1/3 x squared plus 3, or plus 2. 2.
The plus 2.
The plus 2, very good. That is a vertical translation. Up 2. So, from 0, 0, you should have moved your graph 2 units up and put a dot right there. That is where what? What part of our parabola is going to go there? The vertex, okay? Bryson, what else?
It's like a shrink.
You think it's a shrink.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. Why is it a shrink?
Because it's a fraction.
Very good. 1/3, well, not necessarily, it's less than 1. Very good. So because this 1/3 is less than 1, it's a vertical shrink by how much?
-3.
By 1/3. Okay? It's a vertical shrink by 1/3. What does vertically shrinking my graph do?
Make it wider.
It makes it really wide, right? So we're going to make our graph really wide, or wider than normal. But what's the last transformation, Alexandra?
Reflection.
Very good. There's also a reflection over the x-axis. So from this point, all we need to do is we need to erase the blue, and instead we need to flip it, but it's still going to be nice and wide, so it's just facing down, okay? So last but not least, we just flip it, and it should look something like this. Just a little bit wider than our normal parabola. Okay? So in 8.3, what we talk about is more of this stuff, okay? We are going to be graphing by the end of 8.3 without creating a table at all, okay? All of our information is going to be given with the A value, the B value, and the C value. And yes, I did say B value. We're also introducing BX as a term, okay? So we are no longer dealing with monomials and binomials on the right-hand side. It's going to be a trinomial with an A value, a B value, and a C value. Cool beans? All right. So how does this affect our graph? Well, if you look over here at our core concept, okay, you'll notice our axis of symmetry is no longer, for the previous examples, it was always the y-axis, right? We would just shift it up or down depending on the C value. When we introduce that B value, it's going to start moving this thing around, okay? So it's not that complicated if you can remember the one formula that you need, which is this one up here. X equals negative B over 2A. If there's one thing that I recommend that you guys memorize out of the entire lesson today, it is this formula right here. Highlight it, make it nice and pretty, put a star next to it, add glitter to it, whatever you need to do, that bad boy needs to get memorized, okay? And he needs to get memorized by when? Friday, okay? Now, we are going to do a lot of practice with him, okay? So you'll be able to figure him out, but you've got to have him memorized by Friday, okay? All right, so let's take a look at some things that we need to have down pat, that we need to know about our formula, okay, in order to understand what the graph is going to do. It says the graph opens up when A is bigger than 0, okay? That means that A would be what? If A is bigger than 0, what could we say A is? 1 or 2, and all of those numbers are greater than 0, which means they are, starts with a P.
Positive.
Positive, okay? So if A is positive, okay, I want you to draw a little parabola that's facing up, right? So if A is bigger than 0 or A is positive, then our graph has to look like this. In other words, we get that quote-unquote U shape, okay? What would happen when A is negative, though? When A is less than 0? Brandon?
It'll be like
Very good. It'll flip. It'll look opposite, so it'll open down. That's excellent. So if A is negative, okay, draw a little parabola, but facing the opposite direction, okay? So it's going to be facing down. Now, in the past, right, where we had a C value, this C value, 0, C, was your vertex, right? When you introduce this B value, You're moving away from the y-axis, so your vertex is no longer on the y-axis, okay? So your y-intercept is going to be C, where you cross the y-axis, and more specifically, 0, C, okay? Make sure you write that in there. Your C value you can use to find your y-intercept, okay? Your x-coordinate of the vertex is going to be negative b over 2a, and the axis of symmetry is also x equals negative b over 2a. Highlight both of those, okay? This is the most important guy right here, okay? The other stuff we'll see like so many times, you're going to get the hang of it. But this guy right here, negative b over 2a, is super important. And what's one thing in this formula that you could see yourself forgetting? The negative, okay? So if you want to write a little note to yourself, make sure that you remember that negative, okay? All right, let's see these guys in action really quick, okay? So how could we find the axis of symmetry of any equation? Doesn't matter if it has a b value, an a value, or a c value. Brandon?
Look at the 0 on the graph.
Yeah, so it would be x equals negative b over 2a. Okay? You're going to use this for all of your problems to find the axis of symmetry. Now remember, your vertex, right, lies on your axis of symmetry. So if we have the axis of symmetry, what do you guys think we would need to do to find the vertex? Brandon?
Look at where the parabola evens out.
Yes, it is going to be where the parabola evens out. But let's say we didn't have the graph of it. Let's say we didn't have the actual graph, we just had the equation. What could we do once we find that x value to figure out the vertex? What do you think, Bruno? Daniel?
X equals b over 2a.
Good, that'll give us the axis of symmetry. So that'll tell us the line that our vertex is going to lie on. But how could we find the actual coordinates of the vertex? Veronica, what do you think? You're on the right track. So your C value will tell you the y-intercept, right? But how could we figure out this point down here? So do you guys agree that our vertex has to lie on this line, right? So it has to have an x value of whatever the axis of symmetry is. But how do I find my y value of the vertex?
Is it where it passes the y-axis?
Kind of.
Just whatever point it's on.
Very good. You just plug it into your formula, okay? So you take this value, right? And you plug x equals negative b over 2a into your quadratic. And once you plug in your axis of symmetry value into your quadratic, that'll give you the y value where your vertex will be. So your vertex is going to be negative b over 2a, comma, f of negative b over 2a. Now, with all these letters, it can seem confusing, okay? But once we see one example, some light bulbs will go off, I promise. What's up, Daniel?
Is it gonna be like a chart as in like the same thing as we do for the other one, like f of something, and then we find the chart, we put it in the chart as
No, so we're not going to use that chart anymore, okay? All right, last but not least, okay, before we start on the examples, okay, one really quick thing. If a is bigger than 0, that means that the graph opens up. Do you guys agree? That means that our sketch would look like this, right? Would this parabola have a maximum or a minimum value, and why? Brandon? It would have a what? It does have one or the other.
Oh, minimum.
It has a minimum. Why?
because it stops at a point.
Very good. It has a bottom. Do you guys see that? It has a minimum value. So it has a minimum, right? MIN for minimum. If it opens down, right, that's when A is less than 0 or negative. Whoops, put that in the wrong spot. If it opens down, would it have a minimum or a maximum? A maximum. Do you guys see that? So put a max, okay? And that all depends on what value? Your A value, okay? If your A is positive, it's going to open up. If your A is negative, it's going to open down. Cool beans? All right. So let's take a look at the first example. In this first example, all we're doing is we're finding the axis of symmetry and the vertex of each of these functions, okay? So for the first one, all we need to do is identify, okay, what's our A, what's our B, and what's our C? We've done like 1,000 of these types of problems. What's A here, guys?
2.
2. What's B?
8.
And C?
-1.
-1, okay? That's the first thing that you do. Then you should ask yourself, okay, let me use the formula, which was for axis of symmetry, x equals negative b over 2a. All we do is we plug in the values that we now have. What did we say b was? 8. So plug in 8 for b, so it's going to be negative. Always put parentheses when you're plugging in. Put an 8 up top. And then it's 2 times, what was our a value? 2, so put a 2 there. So my axis of symmetry is negative b over 2a, which is negative 8 over 2 times 2. So, what does this simplify to? Daniel?
8 minus 16 minus 1. Oh, wait, no. -2.
Thank you. It's negative 8 over 4, right? And then that does simplify, you said to what? Negative 2. Very good. Okay? So, I think, Daniel, you were ahead of me. Okay? So, one step at a time. So, my axis of symmetry, guys, and this is something that happened on the quiz. My axis of symmetry is not negative 2. My axis of symmetry is an equation of a line. And an equation of a line is not a number. What is my axis of symmetry? Ronnie? You had to write x equals negative 2. If you wrote a number for your axis of symmetry, you got those questions wrong. Okay? You need to write that your axis of symmetry is x equals negative 2. Are we okay with that? Are we going to do that going forward? Okay. Now, your vertex, okay, is you take this negative 2 and you plug it into your f of x. So we're going to say our vertex we can find by saying f of negative 2 equals 2 times negative 2 squared plus 8 times negative 2 minus 1. Okay? We're taking the axis of symmetry value and we're plugging it into our function for our quadratic. That will tell us the y value of our vertex. Because remember, a vertex is a point. So it has 2 values, an x value and a y value. So when we plug in negative 2, Brandon, what do we get? From here. Okay? We use the axis of symmetry formula to help us find the negative 2. All right, so once we plug in negative 2, someone help me out. What am I going to do here? Daniel, go for it.
Alright, so you do -2 squared first, which would be 4.
Why do I do that first?
Because have this.
Good.
And then it'd be 8.
Yeah, so this is going to be 8.
And then 8 times -2 is -16, so it'd be 8 minus 16, and then minus 1.
Good.
And then just equal out to -25.
Try it again. So 8 minus 16 gives me what?
No. -9.
Negative 8 minus 1, which gives me negative 9. Okay? Now, that is not my vertex. Remember, my vertex is a point. Who thinks they know what the vertex is? Sophia? Negative 2 comma negative 9. That is my vertex. Do we see that? Where did the negative 2 come from? The axis of symmetry. Where did the negative 9 come from? When I plugged it in, okay, and I found my y value of my vertex. Yes, Brandon.
So it ended up being -8 minus 1, so is it always just gonna end up, would it always end up being
No. You're going to get different values every time. Okay? All right, let's check out the second one. We've got B. Okay? F of x equals 3x squared minus 2x. This is a binomial. What term is missing? C. So C is equal to 0. So let's write A equal to 3, B equal to negative 2, and C equals 0. Cool? All right. How do I find my axis of symmetry, my AOS? Isa?
X equals negative 3 over 2a.
Bingo. And when you fill it in, what do you get?
So you plug in, so it would be 2 since it cancels out.
Good. A negative, negative 2. Excellent.
So it would be 2 over 2 times 3, which is going to give you 2 over 6, which simplifies to 1/3.
Beautiful. Okay. So we plugged in the negative 2, and the 2 over 3. Guys, this is super important. If you want to highlight this, I would. Okay. Isa was 100% right. She said negative 2. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
It's because it's x equals negative b over 2a, and our b value is negative. Do you guys see that? So if you miss one of those negatives, you will get it wrong. Okay, do you guys see how important that negative is? Okay, so my axis of symmetry is not 1/3. What's my axis of symmetry, guys? X equals 1/3. Are we okay with that? All right, so my axis of symmetry is x equals 1/3. What do I do from here? Bryson?
Then you copy down to f of x. Or you find the vertex.
By doing what?
You put down the, or for every x, you put in 1/3.
Good, I substitute.
So it would be like 3, and then parentheses be, 1 over 3 to the second power. And then minus 2, and then in parentheses 1 over 3.
Mm-hmm. Next. What would you do next, Bryson?
Okay.
Okay. Holding.
Okay, I was writing it down. And then you like find the answer for them, like you multiply them.
Okay, what do I start with?
You start with the 3. Or no, you do the 1/3 to the second power,
Why do I start there?
because that's PEMDAS.
Very good. Exponents will come before multiplications. So what do I get?
You get 1 over 6. Oh wait, no, 1 over 9.
Good. So it's going to be 3 times 1 over 9.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Excuse me, Alexander.
And then what, Bryson?
And then you do the rest of it, and then like,
Oh, minus 2
Yeah.
times 1 over 3. Okay.
and then you multiply like the parentheses with the regular number,
Okay.
and it'd be 1 over 3, since like that's
Well,
simplified.
let's do it one step at a time.
Alright.
It would be 3 over 9, right?
Yeah, simplified to 1 over 3.
Yeah, that does simplify to 1 over 3.
And then it'd be 2 over 1 times 1 over 3.
Yep.
Actually, negative.
Excuse the interruption. Isabella Garcia, please report.
You'd have to find common denominator.
Good. Well, so I
Oh,
like
never
that you're
mind.
looking for that, but when we simplified the not 3 over 9, it becomes the
Yeah.
same denominator.
That's,
So then what do we get, Bryson?
So it'd be negative 2 over 3. And then you finish off by subtracting.
Yep.
And be negative 1 over 3.
Good. Bryson, that was excellent, okay? Everything that you said was perfect. But that's not my vertex, guys. What is my actual vertex for this problem? Brandon?
1/3 common negative.
Good, okay? Make sure you write them as a coordinate. This is your vertex. Are we cool on that? We're not going to just leave it and say that our vertex is negative 1/3, are we? Because people did that on the quiz, and I wasn't very happy, okay? We're Gucci on this? Do you guys want to try one on your own? Okay, do C on your own. Try it out. Use the previous 2 examples as like a template of what to do, and then we'll go over it. Don't go to D unless I've checked that you got C right.
So your A, B, and C, A is equal to 1.
A is equal to 1.
B is equal to 6. And then C is equal to
All right, keep going.
And then your formula would be x equals negative b over 2a.
And this is to find what?
The, what do you call it, AOS or something like that?
Yeah, axis of symmetry. Very good. Okay.
And then you plug them in, you would get negative 6 over 2 times 1. And then you would get negative 6 over 2, which would simplify to negative 3.
Good.
So your axis of symmetry would be negative 3. And then you put in negative 3 for g of x. So g of negative 3 would be equal to negative 3. What's that called? 2 on top. So negative 3, yeah, and the 2 on top.
You could say it to the second power or squared.
Plus 6. And then parentheses negative 3. And then plus 5.
Yep.
And then negative 3 to the second power would give you 9.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 6 and then parentheses negative 3 would be negative 18.
Okay.
And then plus 5. So it would be 9 minus 18 plus 5. And then you get 9 minus 18 would give you negative 9 plus 5, which would be negative 4.
Beautiful.
And then the vertex would be negative 3 comma negative 4.
Excellent. Thank you, Cody. That was very good. Okay. One thing though, okay? Our axis of symmetry, you got it right, but you cannot say that your axis of symmetry is negative 3. You have to say that your axis of symmetry is x equals negative 3. Because if you say that your axis of symmetry is negative 3, it's not a number. It has to be a line, and the only way you make a line is by setting up an equation. Okay? All right, very good. Let's do D together, okay? How would we start D, guys? A, B, C, baby, okay? A is equal to? Negative 1/2. B is equal to? And C is equal to? All right. What do I do from here? What do I do from here? AOS. What's my axis of symmetry? Negative B over 2A.
And then, oh, okay, can I do it?
Yeah, go ahead, Isa.
Okay, so then you plug it in, and it would be negative 7 over 2 times negative 1 over 2.
Yep.
And then that equals to negative 7 over negative 1.
Good. Why?
Because when you multiply negative, like negative and half by another negative half is negative, like 1 whole or negative.
Very good. Okay.
And then that cancels the negative cancels out to be 7 over 1, which just gives you 7. So it's like after this symmetry is 7. X equals 7.
Thank you. It's x equals 7. Very good. Okay.
And then you plug it in for the vertex. And then it would be h of 3. I mean, not 3, 7. Sorry. And then equals, and then you plug it in. So it would be negative 5 times 7 squared plus 7 times 7 minus 4.
Excellent.
And then 7 squared is 49.
Mm-hmm.
So 49 times negative 1/2. And then plus 49 minus 4.
Okay.
And then 49 times negative 1/2 is negative 49 over 2
Yep.
plus 49. And then, okay, wait, let me do it.
Yeah. So she got to here. What would we do next, guys? Bryson?
Like terms.
Yes, I agree. They're all like terms because there's no variable. Okay, so they're all constants. So how would you combine these though?
You just minus.
You can't just subtract them. Gabby?
You multiply the top and the bottom by 2 so that they have the same denominator.
Very good. We need a common denominator. So you could subtract the last two first, and you would get negative 49 over 2 plus 45. Do you guys agree that 49 minus 4 is just going to give us 45? And then, just like Gabby said, this is technically over 1, so we have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2. and we'll get negative 49 over 2 plus what? 90 over 2. And then can I add these now? Yep, so what do I get? 41 over 2.
Let's go.
What's my vertex though? That's not my vertex.
7,
7 comma 41 over 2. Yes? Yes. Brandon, what's up?
Couldn't you have just simplified the negative 1, 9, and 6 to get negative 7?
Next, guys, is we are going to be graphing these functions without using a table, okay? So we're going to use that axis of symmetry, that vertex, and one other piece of information to graph all of these functions, okay? So put a little star next to no table, okay? Before, the only way we graph these was by using a table, okay? All right, so first things first, label your A, your B, and your C. What's A?
3,
What's B?
6, negative 6,
And what's C?
5.
Okay. Next, we need to find the axis of symmetry. How would I find that? Daniel?
It'd be negative b over 2a, so it would be just, since it's already negative, you'd put 6 over 3 times 2, which would be 6. So just
Good.
like
It'd be
6
negative 6, which is just positive 6, over 2 times
3.
3.
So it'd be 6 over
6
6,
over 6.
and then x equals 1.
So it's 1. So our axis of symmetry is x equals 1. Very good. Okay. What would I do from here? So I found x equals 1. I'm going to put it on my graph now. So if my axis of symmetry is x equals 1, what does that mean?
It's gonna be on the 1.
Good. So a dotted line vertically on the 1. Do you guys see that?
Oh, because it's not gonna be on the y-axis anymore?
Correct. Okay. Because we have a b term, right? Our axis of symmetry is no longer going to be on our y-axis. Do you guys see the difference here? Do you see how it's off from the y-axis? It's no longer just straight down the middle of our graph. It's to the right 1 unit. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, next, we don't know where our vertex is, though. How could we find out our vertex? Daniel?
You plug in 1, so it'd be just, since it's already 1, so it's just gonna be everything without the x's, so it's just gonna be 3, or f of 1 equals 3 in parentheses 1 squared,
Yep.
and then minus 6 in parentheses 1 plus 5,
Yep.
so it'd just be 3 minus 6 plus 5. And then you do 3 minus 6, negative 3, plus 5, 3 negative 2, plus 2. And then the vortex is 1, 2.
1, comma 2.
What's the vertex?
The vertex is at 1, comma 2. Very good. So if I did everything right, my vertex should be on my axis of symmetry. Okay? If I did it right. If it's not, I messed something up. Okay? So go to the point 1, comma 2. Is that part of our axis of symmetry? Yes. Okay, so put in that point. So we have our vertex, our axis of symmetry. The last piece of information is you're going to use your y-intercept. And I told you guys at the beginning, what was the y-intercept of the function? It was the c value, okay? So down here at the bottom, write that c equals 5. And your y-intercept is going to be 0, comma your c value. So my y-intercept here is 0, comma 5. Rewind.
Yeah. Okay, so it's 1, comma 2. So where do you put the object?
At 1, comma 2.
You just put that. That's it.
That's my vertex, right? Then 0, comma 5, right, came from the c value, which is always going to be my y-intercept, okay? So 0, comma 5 on my graph is going to be right here. Okay? Now, there's only one other point that we know, okay? And it's the fact that this is an axis of symmetry, right? What does symmetry mean? It's even on both sides, right? So if there was another point on our graph that we could put, what other point do you think we could put? Shayla? Negative 1, 2. This one? You're close. So remember, your vertex, there's only one vertex, right? Let's find the other side of this point. Cody?
It'll be
2, 5. Okay? 2, 5 is the extra point. Do you see how it's repeated on both sides of the axis of symmetry? Don't repeat the vertex, okay? So this was 1 unit away, so we moved 1 unit away on this side, and we got the second point. So now we've got a parabola that when you draw it, it should be symmetrical about that axis. This is our vertex, axis of symmetry. And then this is our y-intercept. All right, so we graphed it. The last thing that it asked us to do was find the domain and the range. What is the domain of this guy? All real numbers, okay? What's the range, though? Ronnie? Y is bigger than 2? Close. Cody?
bigger than or equal to.
Very good. Okay, you have to include the fact that our vertex is part of our graph, right? So it's greater than or equal to 2. All right? Good stuff. Any questions? All right, let's do one more and then we'll be done, okay, for today. So go all the way down to example D. Okay? Hold on. Before. Yes, you will be able to, Isa. But guys, really quickly, what's different about this problem? What?
They're all negatives.
They're all negatives, but which negative matters the most?
C. A.
The A value. Why does the A value being negative matter?
Because doesn't it mean like it's a reflection?
It's going to be facing down. Make sure you write that since this is negative, our graph, our parabola at the end should look, it should point downwards, okay? It should look like an N, not a U, okay? All right, so let's start. We're going to start by finding our axis of symmetry. So A is equal to -5, B is equal to -10, and C is equal to -2. Isa, take over. How do I find my axis of symmetry?
Okay, so the axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a.
Mm-hmm.
And then since they're all negative, it's going to cancel out. So we negative 10, so it would just be 10
Okay.
over 2 times -5. And then that's going to give me 10 over 10, which is -1.
Close. Ronnie?
Would it be 10 and -10?
It's 10 over -10. Okay? So instead of 1, what are we going to get, Isa? Good. So what's my axis of symmetry?
Your axis is x equals -1.
Good. So let's put that on our graph. How do I graph that?
You draw a dotted line across -1.
Yep, and it's horizontal or vertical?
Well, a vertical.
Mm-hmm. Good. All right, let's go on. What do I do next?
And now you have to find the vertex.
Yep.
So it'll be p of -1 equals -5 times -1 squared minus 10 times -1 minus 2, which then gives you, so -1 squared is 1, so it'll be 5 times 1, and then -10 times -1 is going to be 10 minus 2.
Excellent.
And you put it on the graph.
So negative 1 comma 3. Why am I happy when I put my point here? What checks out so far?
Because it's on the axis.
My vertex lied on the axis of symmetry. That's excellent, okay? And the last thing that I need to do, guys, what do I use? Yep,
The C.
the C value. So my C value was?
-2.
So what's my y-intercept?
0 and
0 comma negative 2. Put that on your graph, and it should be down here. What else will be a point on my graph, guys? Cody?
-2,
-2, because it's axis of symmetry, so it's symmetrical on both sides. And then we draw our parabola. What do you notice about this parabola? It's facing down, right? Did we anticipate that it would face down? We sure did, okay? What's the domain here? All real numbers. What's the range, though? Brandon?
Y is less than or equal to +3.
Y is less than or equal to +3. Absolutely right. All right, this was the last one we were going to do, okay? Turn these in once you're done.